example of truth. It was so important for me to talk to them backstage and ask them, what they did. And some of them said, I did my meditations 3 times, in one day. And I realized in their testimony that they were doing their meditations 3 times a day, not to heal. They were doing their meditations 3 times a day to change. And they understood if they thought the same way, if they acted the same way, and they felt the same way, their biology would be the same because they're the same. They really got very practical and started thinking differently, started acting differently, started feeling differently. They practiced doing it over and over again, and they got so good at doing it with their eyes closed, they could do it with their eyes open. They couldn't have 1 hour of a good meditation and 15 hours of feeling sorry for themselves. That would be defaulting back to the old personality. So I learned that people truly were doing their meditations to change. The second thing that I discovered was that not only were they doing their meditations to change, but they actually were doing them to believe again. That when they responded or reacted to certain problems or conditions in their life and they felt the same emotions, those familiar emotions caused them to connect basically to memories of the past, and they lost their belief in that future. And when they did that and they started disbelieving that they could heal or they could change, they just didn't turn on the TV or get on their cell phone and go through social media. They actually made the decision in that moment to change their belief, and they would not get up from their meditation until they actually felt in their hearts that they were healed, and they could feel that feeling somehow. That feeling in their heart began to inform their brain that that belief was possible. And we discovered that it was that coherent thought process with that coherent heart process, that image and that emotion, that thought and that feeling, that stimulus and response, that was actually conditioning the body biologically to live in the future. And the stronger the emotion they felt, the more they could remember the image. That's how a long-term memory is created. And so then they could remind themselves of that future and get up from their meditation. It took them 3 times to believe again that it was possible, that was their way that they ultimately healed. So when we started looking at this idea of a clear intention and an elevated emotion, you can't bypass the relationship between the heart and the brain. And there's a very strong correlation. In one of our events, we hooked up a heart rate monitor to the brain scan. And the brain may think, but the heart knows. And when you can teach people how to move out of those emotional states, those conditioned addictive states of the arousal of survival, and not try to anticipate the future based on the past, and not default out of the present moment. If you can teach them how to get beyond the habits and emotions of their body, to get beyond thinking about the predictable future, the known, or the familiar past, the known, and settle into the present moment, overcome their environment and all the stimulation that causes them to feel a certain way, and lock into that present moment. And work with their body long enough to begin to break the chain of thinking and feeling that's based on these lower hormonal energy centers, emotional centers, and start working with their body and settle into the unknown, the present moment, and teach them how to relax in that state. Nothing bad happens to them, because the unknown normally in survival is a scary place. You stretch the veneer of what's possible, they can relax into the unknown and give them something to do. If they keep relaxing into their heart, we discovered very early on when they did that properly, and it was hooked up to a brain scan, like picking up a sheet and going like this, the heart was sending a wave of information to the brain to move into these beautiful alpha states. It was informing the brain that it was safe to create. What a great, elegant moment to see the interplay of the heart and the brain. So if a person was able to do this and their heart started beating very orderly and very coherently, and they had the formula of understanding of how to create brain coherence. They were able to do those two things simultaneously. There comes this synchronization between the heart and the brain that I think is transcendent of space and time. Somehow there's harmonics or resonance that's creating. The heart, in its way of influencing the brain, as it sends these waves of energy of alpha into the brain. The alpha is moving into a creative state, an imaginary state. The brain starts getting highly organized and highly coherent. And when you start getting kind of this closed system of coherence, dramatic networks of neurons are cross-coupling, they're communicating together, the brain starts moving into this psychic union. The waves start interfering with waves and building waves that have higher energy. So we saw the heart energy, the very low frequency of the heart, actually raise up, and that's the energy that the heart needs to beat, very, very profoundly move up, very steadily, and then you'd see the parasympathetic nervous system move up. That would make sense. The person's moving into a state of relaxation, of growth and repair, and then all of a sudden we saw this kind of dropping down of the parasympathetic nervous system to a point, an elevation of energy by the person putting their attention in their heart. And then here comes the sympathetic nervous system just starting to become aroused. But the arousal is not fear. The arousal is not aggression or competition. The arousal is not pain. The arousal is ecstasy. And the brain moves into these elegant states of coherent, highly coherent gamma brainwave patterns. And delta is carrying theta, and theta is carrying alpha, and alpha is carrying beta, and beta is carrying high beta, and high beta is carrying gamma, and gamma is superconsciousness. And so seeing a person move into the state where they're relaxed in their heart and awake in their brain means they're no longer stressed out, unconscious, and living in some program. And when a person's able to do that in the present moment, and that present moment, of course, being the unknown, without trying to predict the next moment or go to the past moment, something really profound happens. Our data from our functional MRIs shows then that the very network of neurons in the brain that controls the default of trying to predict the future based on the past, in 7 days, that person can actually grow more neurons in their brain to help them be present. And that is rewriting a new program.